Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Dharmaya.
Namo Dharmaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Namah.
Namo
So firstly, welcome to all of those of you online who weren't at the session that we did last night, our time. Very good to have you join us. Welcome to Punyamati, who's turned up in person here. I wasn't here last night. Good to see you. I think everybody else was. Okay. So before we start into the material, just a couple of practical things for the in-person retreatants. Firstly, there's a notice up about meditation reviews. So if you'd like a meditation review, please do sign that as soon as possible, and then we can work out details of where you'll meet and things like that. Sadly, we can't really provide meditation reviews for you online, but if you're online and you would like to make arrangements with some other people online, somebody else, to meet with them and talk about your practice, then that would be great. And the other thing, again, for those of us here, is that we'll be going into full silence from after supper this evening. So from when you're away from the dinner area. If you're online, you can go into silence and have supper just whenever you like. Yeah. Okay. Or not, as the case may be. So in these sessions, the way it's likely to go is that usually there'll be a mixture of some presentations, some teaching, and some guided meditations to take whatever we've been talking about deeper. Usually we'll start with some teachings. Occasionally we might just start with meditation, but all these sessions will go like that. So if you're sitting and you're a bit out of practice with doing a lot of sitting, you might want to sit really comfortably while I'm talking, and then it's easier if you want to be in a good meditation posture during the meditations. Today, probably there might be a little bit more talking, just because today's a bit more introductory. And today is also Dharma Day. It's full moon day. And so on Dharma Day, often we focus on the Buddha's first teaching, or we focus on some bit of conceptual Dharma. But here, to celebrate Dharma Day, we're going to explore the Avalokiteshvara Sadhana. because a sadhana is really an essentialized piece of Dharma that you then live out in meditation. Yes, so the figure of Avalokiteshvara embodies all sorts of qualities that the Dharma helps us to develop. And the sadhana has all kinds of pointers to the nature of things, to how things are. And all that, you sort of go through that day after day after day. And in doing that, you take on more and more of the qualities. You begin to see more and more deeply into the nature of things. Yes, it's as if, in a way, thousands, maybe 1,000 years of Buddhist teaching got sort of condensed into this sort of essence that you really needed, which was this figure of Avalokiteshvara, for instance. So if we really go deeply into the sadhana, there's a tremendous amount of Dharma. And the sadhana that we're going to look at, particularly, it has a number of deep Dharma verses, as well as visualizing ourselves as Avalokiteshvara with all those qualities. So it's incredibly rich, and really feels very auspicious that we're starting on it on the full moon day, and it feels like a very good way to celebrate Dharma Day. Yeah, sadhana is deep experiential Dharma, fundamentally. Okay, so in this session we won't get to the sadhana, but we may receive the sadhana, all being well. So I want to look at our connection, the order's connection with Avalokiteshvara and how it started. Because when we come to the sadhana, you'll see there's a lot about lineage. There's a whole prayer to the lineage of teachers. And one of the things which really supports your Dharma practice is to have a sense of who you're practicing with. I often say there are two kind of questions that are really helpful to ask yourself about Dharma practice in general, but maybe particularly about sadhana. One is, who are you practicing for? So, yeah, I'm practicing for me. I'm practicing to free myself from falling into various Vessantara traps. But I'm also wanting to practice for people that I'm close to, that I really care about. And I'm practicing, as my heart opens more and more, I'm practicing for all of us on the retreat. And as my heart really opens, I'm practicing for this suffering world. So that's what I'm practicing for. And at different times and different days, we may focus on ourselves. We may focus on something very vast. We may focus on one person. It may be that we, just for ourselves, we wouldn't get to our meditation cushion today. But then there's somebody that we can think of that we're connected to and think, well, I'm going to practice for them. And that can get you to your meditation cushion. And we can have a real sense too of the order, this extraordinary kind of collection of us that we've joined, that we're practicing together in our different situations. Yeah, like on this retreat, there's some of us here, there's some of us in Ireland, Germany, Australia, etc. But on a deeper level, we're practicing together. So that's who we're practicing for, and also to some extent with. But then you can take that who we're practicing with even deeper, because the heart mind, as we go really deep into it, doesn't know any limits. It really doesn't know any limits, which means not only can we feel connection with order members on the other side of the world, we can feel connected to all the practitioners of Avalokiteshvara. We have connections with all of those. So outside time, outside space, it's like when we take up the practice, we join a great community of practitioners developing wisdom and compassion more and more deeply. And particularly it's if we join a lineage. So our connection to the lineage, well, where does that start? Well, it starts from Bhante. So it starts on the 24th of October 1957, actually, when Bhante is living in Kalimpong. He's been given the Green Sadhana, which is the first sadhana that he's practiced. But a Nyingma Lama called Kachu Rinpoche has befriended him and has encouraged him to ask Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, who we have a photo of on the shrine, and there's a photo of available for those of you online, to ask Jamyang Khyentse for an initiation, because Jamyang Khyentse is considered to be absolutely one of the greatest lamas of the last century. He's a really extraordinary practitioner, and he's gone to a great depth, but also he's a really integral member of what's called the Re-May movement. May in Tibetan means no, and Re is limits or boundaries. So there's a whole group of lamas who have stepped out of being a Nyingma Lama or a Kagyu Lama or a Gelug Lama or a Sakya Lama, and are concerned for the whole tradition and are particularly making sure that things don't get lost. And in 1957, it's 1 year after the Chinese have invaded Tibet. So Jamyang Khyentse is this great figure. And Bhante thinks, yes, it would be good if I asked him for an initiation. So he asked Jamyang Khyentse. And Jamyang Khyentse says, okay, I'll give you 3 or 4. So on the 24th of October 1957, off goes Bhante to a house in Darjeeling to receive a set of 4 initiations. So there's Manju Gosha, which gives us the Manju Gosha Stuti sadhana that we're doing in the order, Avalokiteshvara, which gave us the sadhana that we're going to focus on in this retreat, Vajrapani, and Tara. So he turns up with really bad sort of gum infection, so he's really feeling rotten. And is taken into this room where Jamyang Khyentse is with a number of other people. But Bhante's asked for this initiation, so he's the focus is on him. And in that sort of tantric initiation, you sit in front of the Lama, and it's not like you don't sit, eyes down, you really take them in. It's a very direct meeting. It's a very direct communication. An initiation should be a deep sort of shared meditation, ideally. Which is made a bit more difficult because Jamyang Khyentse is doing it all in Tibetan. Bhante has a friend there who translates where necessary, but Bhante can't really follow it all. But still, he takes in Jamyang Khyentse. So, we can sort of imagine this room where it must be fairly big because there are 8 people there. There's Jamyang Khyentse, who at this stage of his life is some 64. When he was 57, he was in very bad health, and he was advised to take a consort, which is what happens in Tibetan Buddhism. So he has his his Dakini, his Sangyung, his secret consort, sitting to his left, serving children. He's quite young. And Bhante talks about their spiritual relationship a bit in Precious Teachers. It really is a spiritual relationship. She's just deeply has a heart devotion to Jamyang Khyentse. And then next to her is the Maharani of Sikkim, who will be dressed very well for this important occasion. And then on the other side of Jamyang Khyentse is his monk attendant, who's going to help him with the initiations and carry out some of the ritual bits on his behalf. Then there's another monk, then there's Katshu Rinpoche, and then there's Bhante's friend, Tibetan friend, who's doing the translation for him. So it must be big enough to include them. It must smell of incense, Tibetan incense, really strongly. Yeah. And there's Jamyang Khyentse, who, he's 64, which is quite old for a Tibetan. He left Tibet, as it happens. Perhaps there was some karma involved, some time before the Chinese invaded. So now he's living in India. He's not in good health. He's going to die within a couple of years. But there's also something magnificent about him. I mean, all the accounts that I've read of him, he's quite tall, sort of very short white hair, quite long sort of earlobes, but it's not his physical presence, it's like he radiates something. He's just very, very dignified. There's something magnificent about his being, which just comes out of him. You can imagine that as over these 4 hours, as he enters into the sort of deep meditation on these different figures, that sort of magnificence kind of fills the room, that sort of radiance fills the room. And Bhante says he doesn't remember much about the details. He remembers you sort of offer a mandala at the start of the initiation, so he remembers doing that. But what really stayed with him was that as Jamyang Khyentse was invoking these different figures, so as he was invoking Avalokiteshvara, it's like his face lit up, and it's just, it's like for him, Avalokiteshvara was there. And then in the course of the initiation, Jamyang Khyentse would have imagined Bhante in front of him dissolving into emptiness, the sort of limited, psychophysical Bhante just sort of dissolving away. And yes, having been sort of blessed by Avalokiteshvara, he would imagine Bhante becoming Avalokiteshvara. And then he'd imagine the mantra going to Bhante. And yes, so that was the initiation that Bhante received. But in a sense, we were all there too. In a way, the whole order was kind of there, in sort of potential, as it were. It's like we've been kind of born out of that experience. And with that initiation, not only was Bhante introduced to that beautiful, compassionate, loving, rich, wise state of mind that Avalokiteshvara embodies, but he was also, as it were, linked to all those previous practitioners who had faithfully handed on the practice down through the centuries. So we have that link. It's like people sometimes say, well, you're not a Tibetan Buddhist movement, and we're not taking on those lineages. But that's sort of half. It's one extreme is to say, well, we're just a Western movement, and the other extreme is to say, well, we're Tibetan because we have all these. Bhante had all these Tibetan teachers. Bhante came to the West and really felt into what would be appropriate for us here. So he didn't carry all the Tibetan Buddhist stuff with him, but at the same time, that sort of spiritual energy and some of those experiences that he had and the practices which would help us to have those experiences have come into the order. So there's a sort of middle way. It's like we have a connection to that lineage, even though we haven't kind of carried it on in the full sense, because Westerners are different and we don't need that kind of all of that Tibetan Buddhist package. But the essentials have come. So we have that connection. So it's part of who we're practicing with is we're practicing with Bhante, we're practicing with Jamyang Khyentse, we're practicing with his teachers, and all those who didn't become teachers but were practicing Avalokiteshvara. We have connection with all of those. And if we feel that, it takes our practice onto a different level. It's like those days where I feel like, here's little old me sitting down to do my sadhana. Actually, I'm not noticing. I've closed down and not realized that actually, on a heart level, here's all of us practicing a sadhana that just goes on, and in fact, outside time always is going on, and we can tune into that. So, starting to tune into that is being open to the possibility that that can be the case. Okay, is that clear? Good. So for the rest of this, next let's do a little bit of practice then, and let's focus on connecting up to where the sadhana has come from, and also during it, at a certain point, I'll ask a couple of people, and you two know who you are. So for the in-person people, what will happen is that two people will come, and there are sadhanas on the shrine here being looked after by Jamyang Khyentse and Bhante, and you'll be given a sadhana, which I think actually always feels like the right way to be given a sadhana. I always feel a bit sad when people say, "Oh, I got given mine, sort of handed out at some point." The piece of paper isn't important, but what it embodies, what it connects us to, is deeply important. So we'll just receive the sadhana ritually, and if you're watching online or watching recording, please just do this, and at the point where this happens, just feel that you're being given the sadhana by the whole lineage, being given it by Jamyang Khyentse, being given it by Bhante, being given it by your preceptor. If you've been doing the practice for years, still you get a copy, because we all kind of start afresh each time. So it's important that we all feel this sense of today. I'm really taking in this connection with Avalokiteshvara. So that builds on all our previous connections. But it's not sort of been there, done that, I've got the sadhana, I don't need one. We all participate. Okay, so let's do a little guided meditation. So we'll start with a little space. And if someone's looking at a laptop, they have time to really make themselves comfortable in meditation. But it's always good to begin with a sense of not having to do anything. Before we do a practice, we come back to a sense of a point of freedom. Nothing to do. Now let's take our awareness down to the ground. Doing our best to feel the actual sensations that tell us that the ground is there. The cushion, the chair seat, the floor, the meditation mat, whatever it is. Feeling that firm, reliable base. And from there, letting the body rise up. We're poised between the earth and the sky. Now bring your awareness into the body. Letting that awareness be as kind, as receptive as possible. How is it now? Now becoming aware of the breathing. Now connecting with the motivation to become Avalokiteshvara, and to connect with that great community of Avalokiteshvara practitioners down through the centuries. All practicing great compassion, all with gentle eyes, looking at the suffering world, open to help. And particularly with all those who've practiced this sadhana down to Jamyang Khyentse. You could imagine being in that initiation in 1957, sitting there as Jamyang Khyentse became radiant, his face lit up. Visualizing Avalokiteshvara Jamyang Khyentse invoking the Adhisthana of Avalokiteshvara and the lineage on us, that we can truly become the great compassionate one. Letting ourselves feel the part of us that longs to be free of limitations, heart that longs to open, the part of us that longs to know the truth, to experience how things really are. And share that medicine with the world. With the support of the lineage of Avalokiteshvara, letting this sense of limited me relax, fall away, letting there be open space. Letting that open space be filled with the sound of the mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. And out of that open space, letting Avalokiteshvara appear, letting there be that spiritual rebirth with the support of the whole lineage. Now letting go of doing anything. The experiences continue, that's fine. Just relaxing. Like relaxing into a sense of connection. Connection with Avalokiteshvara. Connection with the lineage of practitioners. Letting that sense be nourishing. And as we come to the end of the practice, just sitting, we also receive a copy of the practice, as this is the way in which we can deepen and deepen our link, our connection with Avalokiteshvara, with the whole lineage. If you're online, the sadhana's available to you. Lastly, in our own way, silently, making the wish that all beings benefit directly or indirectly from us deepening our connection with Avalokiteshvara.